The starship Endeavour drifted slowly through the Kepler system, its blue and white hull gleaming under the light of an alien sun. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge, watching the massive space station that hung before them like a metal mountain. After 3 years of traveling through empty space, humanity had finally found others. The space station was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Strange ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Some looked like giant beetles made of metal. Others moved like swimming sharks with glowing fins. Captain Brooks had never seen anything so amazing and terrifying at the same time. "Sir, we're getting a signal," said Communications Officer Amy Foster. Her fingers moved quickly over her controls. "It's coming through on multiple frequencies. They want to talk." The main screen flickered to life. A massive reptilian face appeared, covered in thick scales that looked like armor. Yellow eyes stared at them with cold intelligence. When the creature spoke, its voice was deep and threatening. "I am Commander Thexval of the Vorthak Empire. You will identify yourselves and prepare for classification." Captain Brooks stepped forward. He tried to look confident, but his heart was beating fast. "This is Captain Ryan Brooks of Earth. We come in peace, seeking friendship with other intelligent life." The alien's eyes narrowed. Behind him, other creatures moved in the shadows. Brooks could see insect-like beings with multiple arms and something that looked like a walking tree made of crystal. "Peace?" Thexval made a sound that might have been laughter. "You speak of things you do not understand, soft creature. You will be classified according to your biological worth. Prepare to be boarded." The screen went dark. Brooks turned to his crew. Dr. Lisa Morgan, the ship's doctor and scientist, looked worried. Chief Engineer Danny Campbell was checking his weapons, even though they probably would not help against these aliens. "What do you think they meant by classification?" asked pilot Kevin Shaw. Dr. Morgan pulled up information on her tablet. "From what I could see, these aliens seem to organize themselves by strength and natural weapons. Look at that Vorthak, 10 feet tall, natural armor. Probably weighs twice what we do." "They think strength is everything," said Navigation Officer Laura Beck, "but they haven't seen what humans can really do." 20 minutes later, alien ships surrounded the Endeavour. They were sleek and dangerous, covered in weapons that hummed with energy. Captain Brooks had no choice but to allow them aboard. The aliens that entered his ship were like nothing from Earth's nightmares. The Vorthak soldiers were massive reptiles that had to duck through the doorways. Their scales were thick as armor plates, and small flames leaked from their nostrils when they breathed. Behind them came the insect creatures, Zephyrians with 4 arms, black eyes, and skin that seemed to drip acid. Commander Thexval looked around the human ship with disgust. Soft materials, weak construction, no natural defenses. He pointed a clawed finger at Captain Brooks. "You are clearly a prey species. Weak, small, no natural weapons." Dr. Morgan stepped forward. "You're making a mistake. Humans are more than what you see on the surface. We've survived ice ages, crossed oceans, built civilizations without any natural advantages. We adapt and work together." The Vorthak commander made that laughing sound again. "Ice ages, oceans? Your world must be pathetic if such small things are challenges. You survived because nothing on your world was strong enough to properly hunt you." The insect creature beside him clicked its mandibles together. "The Zephyrian hive mind calculates their threat level at 0.03. They possess no telepathic abilities, no natural weapons, no environmental adaptations. They are suitable only for manual labor." Captain Brooks felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. "What exactly are you classifying us for?" Thexval's yellow eyes gleamed. "The galaxy has order, human. The strong rule. The weak serve. It has been this way for 3,000 years. At the top sit the apex predators, those with natural weapons, superior strength, environmental mastery. Below them are the worker species, then the agricultural specialists, and at the bottom the prey species." He pointed around the bridge. "You are clearly Class 7 prey species. You will be given simple tasks suitable to your limited abilities. Food production, basic construction, cleaning stations. You should be grateful. Many species we simply eliminate." Dr. Morgan's tablet beeped. She had been scanning the aliens while they talked. What she saw made her blood run cold. These creatures were not just strong. They were designed to be predators. Their whole society was built around the idea that might makes right. "What if we refuse?" asked Chief Engineer Danny Campbell. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Thexval's scales rippled and small flames danced around his claws. "Refuse? You use a word that has no meaning for prey species. You will accept your classification, or you will be eliminated. Those are your only choices. Captain Brooks looked at his crew. He could see fear in their eyes, but also determination. These aliens had made one big mistake. They thought humans were weak because they looked soft. They had no idea what humans could do when they were pushed into a corner. "We need time to consider your offer," Brooks said carefully. "Offer?" Thexavel seemed surprised. "This is not negotiation, human. This is classification. However, the Dominion Council requires a formal response. You have 72 of your hours to accept your proper place in the hierarchy." The aliens left as quickly as they had come. As soon as they were gone, Captain Brooks gathered his senior staff in the conference room. "Well," said Amy Foster, "that could have gone better." "They're making a huge mistake," said Dr. Morgan. "They're judging us purely on physical characteristics. They have no idea about human psychology, our ability to adapt, our talent for cooperation under pressure. They've never seen anything like us before," added Danny Campbell. "A species that survived without natural weapons, without being the strongest or the fastest." Captain Brooks looked out the window at the alien station. "They want us to be farmers and janitors, to give up our independence, our exploration, our freedom." "What are we going to do?" asked Laura Beck. "We're going to show them what humans are really made of," Brooks said quietly. "They think they know what strength is. They're about to learn they're wrong." The countdown had begun. In 72 hours, humanity would give its answer to the Dominion Council. But Captain Brooks was already planning for a very different kind of response than the aliens expected. The transport ship that carried the humans to Zerion Prime was old and smelled like rust and fear. Lieutenant Commander Jake Martinez sat with 49 other humans in the cargo hold, listening to the alien guards talk about their chances of survival. "The soft skins will last perhaps 5 days," chittered one of the Zephyrian guards. "The Maulers will smell their fear from orbit." "I give them 3 days," rumbled a Vorthak soldier. "Maybe less if the acid storms come early this season." Jake looked around at his team. These were good people, engineers, scientists, medics, and pilots. They had volunteered to be the advance team, knowing they might never see home again. But they were not giving up without a fight. Dr. Lisa Morgan sat across from him, studying data about Zerion Prime on her tablet.
"The planet has a 36-hour day cycle," she whispered.
"Temperature swings from -40 to +60 Celsius. The atmosphere has pockets of chlorine gas that can kill in minutes." "Sounds like a fun vacation spot," muttered Chief Engineer Danny Campbell. "What about the wildlife?" "Maulers are the main predators. 6-legged pack hunters with metallic claws. They weigh about 300 pounds each and hunt in groups of 8 to 12. Morgan's face was pale. "According to the records, 17 species have been tested on this planet. None lasted more than 2 weeks. The ship shuddered as it entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the small windows, they could see a harsh landscape of red rocks and twisted metal trees. The sky was the color of old blood, and lightning flashed constantly in the distance. When they landed, the alien guards herded them out quickly. Drone Prime Vexect, the Zephyrian observer, clicked its mandibles in what might have been amusement. "You have basic supplies for 7 days," it announced. "If you survive that long, more will be provided. The observation post will monitor your progress. Do try to make it interesting." The aliens flew away, leaving the humans alone on the most dangerous planet in this part of the galaxy. For a moment, nobody spoke. The wind howled across the barren landscape, carrying the smell of sulfur and something that might have been decay. "Well," said Jake, setting down his pack, "this is definitely not Kansas." But instead of panicking, the humans did something that confused the watchers in the observation post. They spread out and started exploring. Not running, not hiding, but actually studying their new environment. Dr. Morgan collected samples of everything she could find: soil, water from a nearby stream, strange plants that grew between the rocks. "The soil is actually quite rich," she announced after an hour of testing. "High in minerals, good for growing things if we can neutralize the acid content." Danny Campbell had found something even more interesting. "Look at this," he called, pointing to a grove of the metal trees. "These aren't really metal. They're some kind of plant that absorbs minerals from the ground. The bark is actually a natural armor against the acid storms." Communications Officer Amy Foster was setting up equipment while Navigation Officer Laura Beck mapped the area. Within 4 hours, they had a complete picture of their immediate surroundings. "The key is the underground river system," explained Beck, showing them her rough map. "It runs throughout this continent. If we can tap into it, we have clean water and a way to move around without being exposed on the surface." That night, they set up camp in a cave that Danny had reinforced with metal from the trees. They posted guards and settled in to sleep. In the observation post, the aliens watched with growing confusion. "They are not behaving correctly," reported Vexith to the Dominion Council. "Prey species should show fear, should seek only the safest hiding places. These humans are mapping the territory and collecting data." "Give them time," replied Commander Thexfall over the communication link. "When the Maulers find them, they will remember their place." The Maulers found them on the second night. Jake was on guard duty when he heard the first howl. It was a sound like metal scraping against stone, echoing across the rocky landscape. He woke the others quietly, and they prepared for what was coming. The pack that attacked them was 12 strong. Each Mauler was the size of a large bear, with 6 legs ending in claws that could cut through steel. Their eyes glowed green in the darkness, and they moved with the coordination of animals that had hunted together for years. But the humans had spent 2 days studying the creatures from a distance. They knew how Maulers hunted, how they communicated, how they moved as a pack. "They always send the youngest one in first," whispered Dr. Morgan. "It's expendable. The real attack comes from the sides." When the young Mauler charged their position, the humans let it come, but they were ready for the real attack. As the pack leaders moved to flank them, Amy Foster triggered a series of small explosions that Danny had prepared using chemicals from the metal trees. The explosions did not hurt the Maulers much, but they confused them. Their careful hunting formation broke apart. In that moment of chaos, the humans struck back. They did not try to fight the creatures head-on. Instead, they used the cave itself as a weapon. Pilot Kevin Shaw had rigged a rockfall trap at the cave entrance. When the Maulers tried to rush inside, tons of stone came down, separating the pack. With the pack split up, the humans could deal with them 1 or 2 at a time. They used nets made from metal tree fibers and weapons that Danny had improvised from ship parts. Most importantly, they worked together. When one human was in danger, the others moved to help immediately. The fight lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 3 Maulers were dead and the rest had fled. The humans had some injuries, but no one was seriously hurt. In the observation post, the aliens stared at their screens in shock. "How is this possible?" demanded Vexith. "No prey species has ever defeated Maulers in direct combat." The report that went back to the Dominion Council that night was very different from what they expected. The humans were not cowering in fear. They were not begging for rescue. Instead, they were adapting to the planet faster than any species in recorded history. "Perhaps we should increase the difficulty of their test," suggested one of the council members. "Commander." Thexfall's yellow eyes glowed with interest. "Yes, let us see how they handle a real challenge. Send them something that will remind them what it means to be prey." But as the humans settled back into their cave, Jake Martinez was already planning for the next day. They had survived the first real test, and they were learning. Every challenge the aliens threw at them would only make them stronger. "What do you think they'll try next?" asked Amy Foster. Jake looked out at the hostile landscape that was slowly becoming familiar. "Something worse, but we'll be ready." The humans were no longer just surviving on Zirian Prime, they were beginning to understand it, to work with it, and that was something the Dominion Council had never seen before. The arena world of Kethmaran hung in space like a giant metal sphere covered in lights and weapons. Captain Ryan Brooks stared at it through the transport ship's window, knowing that this might be the last thing he ever saw as a free man. "The rules are simple," Commander Thexfall had explained back at the station. 7 trials of increasing difficulty. Complete them all, and humanity will be reconsidered for a higher classification. Fail or surrender, and your species accepts its place as Class 7 prey forever. What Thexfall had not said was that no species had ever completed all 7 trials. Most did not survive past the 3rd. The transport docked at the arena, and Brooks was led through corridors filled with aliens from across the galaxy. Some were clearly other prey species, small, scared creatures that kept their eyes down and moved quickly out of the way. Others were predators, tall and strong, who watched Brooks with hungry interest. The holding area where they kept him was a simple metal room with a hard bench. Through the small window, he could see the arena itself, a massive circular space that could be changed to create any kind of fighting environment. But Brooks was not alone. His crew was being held in another section of the facility, and Amy Foster had managed to establish secret communication with him. Using a code based on hand signals that she had developed, she was feeding him information about the arena and its systems. The first trial usually involves a single opponent, her signals told him. Previous fighters have tried to use brute force. All have failed. When the guards came for him, Brooks walked into the arena to the sound of thousands of alien voices. The crowd was mostly predator species, here to watch another prey creature die for their entertainment. But scattered throughout, he could see smaller aliens, prey species like humanity, watching with desperate hope. The arena floor was covered in sand and scattered with large rocks and metal barriers. Across from him, a gate opened and his opponent emerged. The Thraxian berserker was everything Brooks was not. 9 feet tall, covered in natural bone spikes with muscles like steel cables. Its forearms ended in claws that could rip through armor, and its roar made the arena walls shake. The crowd cheered as the berserker charged. Brooks did something that surprised everyone. He started talking. "You're favoring your left side," he said loudly, dodging the creature's first attack. "Old injury? That limp suggests damage to the lower hip joint." The berserker stopped, confused. In 3,000 years of arena combat, no one had ever tried to have a conversation during a fight. Brooks kept moving, but he was not running away. He was studying his opponent, watching how it moved, how it breathed, where its eyes looked before it attacked. "You're tired already," he observed, rolling behind one of the metal barriers. "All that muscle mass, but your cardiovascular system can't keep up. You're built for short bursts of violence, not extended fighting." The berserker attacked again, but this time Brooks was ready. Instead of trying to match the creature's strength, he used its own momentum against it. As the massive alien charged, Brooks guided it into one of the arena's stone pillars. The impact stunned the berserker long enough for Brooks to strike at pressure points that Dr. Morgan had identified in her biological studies. The fight lasted 8 minutes. When it was over, the berserker was unconscious and Brooks was still standing. The arena fell completely silent. In the luxury boxes where the Dominion Council members watched, there was furious conversation. "How did a prey species defeat a Thraxian?" demanded one of the Zephyrian nobles. "Perhaps the berserker was defective," suggested a Vorthak general, but Commander Thexval was watching the recordings of the fight with growing unease. The human had not won through luck or accident. He had systematically analyzed his opponent and exploited weaknesses that the berserker itself probably did not know it had. The second trial began an hour later. This time, Brooks faced a pack of 5 razorhounds, cybernetically enhanced creatures with metal teeth and programmed hunting instincts. Again, the crowd expected a quick execution. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. Brooks had been watching Amy Foster in the crowd, reading her hand signals. His crew had been studying the arena's previous fights, analyzing the behavior patterns of every creature used in the trials. Razorhounds hunt in a specific formation, Amy's signals had told him, but their cybernetic programming has a flaw. They prioritize targets based on threat assessment, but their definition of threat can be manipulated. As the razorhounds spread out to surround him, Brooks did something that had never occurred to the arena masters. He changed their threat priorities by making them compete with each other. Using pieces of broken stone, he marked territory boundaries that triggered the pack animal's instinctive need to establish dominance. Within minutes, the razorhounds were fighting each other instead of him. When the dust settled, 2 of the creatures were dead, and the other 3 were too injured to continue fighting. Brooks had won without killing a single opponent himself. The crowd was no longer cheering. They were murmuring in confusion and worry. Some of the prey species in the stands were sitting up straighter, hope beginning to show in their eyes. By the time Brooks was led back to his holding cell, word of the humans' victories was spreading throughout the galaxy. For the first time in Council history, other star systems were requesting permission to watch the arena feeds. "This is impossible," declared one of the Council members. "Prey species do not defeat predators. It violates the natural order." "Perhaps," said Commander Thexval slowly, "we have misunderstood what makes a predator." That night, in holding cells throughout the arena complex, something remarkable happened. Prisoners from dozens of different species began to communicate with each other for the first time in years. The humans' victories had shown them something they had forgotten, that the strong could be defeated. Brooks himself spent the night preparing for the third trial. Through the wall, he could hear other prisoners whispering in languages he did not understand. But he recognized the tone. It was the sound of hope returning to voices that had given up long ago. The third trial would be different, he knew. The council would not make the same mistakes again. But that was okay. Humans were very good at adapting to new challenges. In her cell 3 levels down, Dr. Lisa Morgan was secretly treating injured prisoners from other species. As she worked, she was also collecting biological data and sharing it with Brooks through their communication network. The arena masters thought they were testing a single human. They had no idea they were facing the entire human crew working together, plus a growing network of allies who were remembering what it felt like to fight back. The revolution had begun with one human refusing to surrender. But it was growing into something much larger, a galaxy-wide awakening that would change everything. News of the humans' arena victories spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace travel. On distant worlds where prey species had worked in silence for generations, creatures stopped their tasks to watch stolen broadcasts of the trials. Engineer Rebecca Stone was working on Supply Station Omega-7 when she first intercepted the coded transmissions. Hidden in routine shipping manifests and trade reports were messages that made her heart race. The Softwalkers have shown the way, read one message from the Kelhari traders. If they can stand against the council, perhaps others can too. Another came from the aquatic Miraleth on the farming worlds. We remember when our ancestors swam free in deep oceans. Before the Dominion decided we were better suited for shallow breeding pools, Rebecca quickly set up a secure communication network, using her engineering skills to hide the signals within normal station operations. Within days, she was coordinating with prey species across 12 star systems, but the council noticed the stirrings of unrest. Their response was swift and brutal. The Vorthak battle fleet that arrived at the Kelhari homeworld gave no warning. Orbital bombardment began immediately, turning 3 major cities into glass craters. The message was broadcast across all frequencies. This is what happens to those who support prey species' delusions of equality. Similar attacks hit the Miraleth farming colonies and a dozen other worlds showing signs of inappropriate behavior. Millions died in the first wave of attacks, yet instead of crushing the growing rebellion, the brutality only made it stronger. Species that had accepted their fate for centuries suddenly remembered what they were fighting for. On the arena world, Dr. Lisa Morgan made a discovery that changed everything. While secretly treating injured prisoners, she had been collecting genetic samples from dozens of different species. What she found in her hidden laboratory would shake the foundations of the Dominion's power. "Look at this," she whispered to Chief Medical Officer Dr. Helen Ward during one of their clandestine meetings. The data on her tablet showed genetic sequences that told a horrifying story. "The Orcs miners have neural pathways that should make them brilliant mathematicians," Morgan explained. "But look at these genetic markers. They've been artificially suppressed for over 2,000 years." Dr. Ward studied the information with growing anger. "And the Kelhari? Natural linguists and diplomats. Their brain chemistry is actually superior to most council species for complex problem solving. But selective breeding programs have been enhancing docility genes while suppressing cognitive development. The pattern was the same across dozens of species. The council had not just conquered the galaxy's prey species, they had been systematically dumbing them down for millennia, creating a worker class that could never challenge their authority. "We have to get this information to the rebellion," said Ward. But first, they had to help Captain Brooks survive his next trial. The fourth trial was different from the previous ones. Instead of physical combat, Brooks found himself in a sterile white room facing 3 creatures that seemed to be made of mist and shadow. The ethereal wraiths were psychic parasites that fed on fear and despair. "This trial tests the mind, not the body," announced the arena's speakers. "The subject will face his deepest fears and greatest regrets. None have ever emerged with their sanity intact." The wraiths circled Brooks like sharks, their whispered voices reaching directly into his thoughts. "You led your species to destruction," one hissed. "Because of your pride, humanity will be enslaved forever." "Your crew trusts you," whispered another. But you will fail them just as you failed everyone else you ever tried to protect. The psychic attack was designed to break him by forcing him to relive his worst moments, times when he had made mistakes, when people had died because of his decisions, when he had felt helpless and alone. But the Wraiths made a fundamental error. They expected to find a mind full of individual fears and personal regrets. Instead, they encountered something they had never experienced before, a human's connection to their entire species' history. As the Wraiths dug deeper into Brooks' psyche, they found not just his memories but the collective memory of humanity. They saw humans surviving ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed other species. They witnessed the Holocaust, slavery, genocide, humanity's darkest chapters. But what confused the Wraiths was that these memories were not sources of weakness. They were sources of strength. Humans had looked into the abyss of their own nature and found ways to keep going, to keep believing in something better. "You think you can break me with fear?" Brooks said aloud, his voice steady despite the psychic assault. "My species has been through worse than anything you can show me. We've faced our own demons and learned to overcome them." The Wraiths recoiled, confused. Their food source had turned toxic. Instead of fear and despair, they were encountering hope and determination backed by thousands of years of human endurance. When Brooks emerged from the trial chamber, not only was his mind intact, but he seemed somehow stronger. Word of this impossible victory spread through the arena complex like wildfire. But Commander Thexaval was no longer interested in following the traditional trial format. The human successes were inspiring rebellions across the galaxy, and the Council was losing control. "Change the rules," he ordered the arena masters. "Trials 5, 6, and 7 will be conducted simultaneously. And bring the humans' crew into the arena. Let us see how brave he is when his pack is threatened." The guards dragged Brooks' crew into a special chamber that slowly began filling with water, not enough to drown them immediately, but enough to create pressure and panic. "You have 1 hour to complete the remaining trials," Thexaval announced. "Fail and your crew dies. Surrender, and they will be released to serve as proper Class 7 workers." It was a perfect psychological trap. No individual could complete 3 trials in 1 hour while worrying about their friend's safety. But Thexaval had made the same mistake as everyone else. He assumed Brooks would face this alone. As the water level rose around the human crew, they were not panicking. They were working. Amy Foster had memorized the guard rotations during their captivity. Laura Beck had mapped every maintenance tunnel by listening to sound echoes. Dr. Ward had been secretly building a network of allies among the other prisoners. When the emergency alarm sounded and the arena security systems went crazy, it was not because of equipment failure. It was because the humans had turned their imprisonment into an opportunity to coordinate the largest prison break in galactic history. As Brooks fought his way through 3 deadly trials simultaneously, his crew led an escape that freed hundreds of prisoners from dozens of species. More importantly, they proved that the supposedly natural order could be broken. The arena became a battlefield as freed prisoners fought alongside arena guards who suddenly remembered they had once been prey species too. In the chaos, something beautiful and terrible happened. For the first time in 3,000 years, the weak were winning against the strong, and across the galaxy, on 1,000 different worlds, other prey species saw the broadcasts and began to remember what freedom felt like. The arena uprising sent shockwaves across the galaxy that reached far beyond the metal walls of Kethmaran. Within hours of the first broadcasts, rebellions erupted on dozens of worlds simultaneously. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the silicon-based Krolek suddenly stopped delivering precious metals to the orbital processing stations. These creatures had been considered barely intelligent by the Council, useful only for their ability to digest rock and excrete purified ores. But when they organized a coordinated work stoppage across 3 star systems, the Dominion's industrial output dropped by 40% overnight. The agricultural worlds were next. The Miraleth, who had been bred for generations to be docile fish farmers, began hiding their harvests in underwater caverns their masters did not know existed. The greening worlds, managed by plant-like species that had been modified to produce specific crops, suddenly found their caretakers growing wild forests instead of food. Most troubling for the Council were the trade routes. The Kelhari had been the galaxy's merchant class for over a millennium. their natural language abilities making them perfect translators and negotiators. When they began developing technical difficulties with their ships, entire sectors lost communication with each other. In the luxury chambers of the Dominion's capital world, emergency sessions ran day and night. The apex predators who had ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years found themselves facing something they had never experienced: coordinated resistance from species they had forgotten could think. "It's impossible," declared General Korthax, a massive Vorthak whose scarred hide told stories of 100 battles. "Prey species do not possess the cognitive ability for large-scale planning. Perhaps our understanding has been incomplete," suggested Hive Queen Zexara of the Zephyrians. Her compound eyes reflected data streams from across the galaxy. "The rebels are using tactics we have never encountered. They avoid direct confrontation, strike at our supply lines, and disappear before we can respond." But it was the report from Intelligence Director Vorthal that truly worried the Council. The humans have somehow established communication networks across the galaxy. They are not just leading these rebellions, they are coordinating them. The truth was even more remarkable than the Council realized. Chief Engineer Danny Campbell, working with alien scientists liberated from the arena, had developed something revolutionary: communication technology that combined human innovation with biological advantages from dozens of species. The Resonance Network, as Campbell called it, used living crystals grown by the Zerathi, quantum processors developed by the Kepler mining operations, and biotechnology borrowed from the Zephyrians' own hive mind systems. The result was a communication web that could not be detected or shut down by Council technology. But the network carried more than just tactical information. Dr. Lisa Morgan's genetic research was spreading like wildfire through the rebellion. On world after world, prisoners and workers learned that their supposed mental limitations were artificial, the result of thousands of years of genetic manipulation. The liberation began with simple medical treatments. Dr. Helen Ward, working with liberated medics from a dozen species, developed genetic therapies that could reverse generations of artificial cognitive suppression. The results were dramatic. Krolex miners who had been considered barely above animal intelligence suddenly began designing mining equipment that was more efficient than anything the Council had ever created. Miraleth farmers started developing aquaculture techniques that could feed entire star systems using a fraction of the resources. Most importantly, the newly awakened species began contributing their unique abilities to the rebellion. The deep space knowledge of the Krolex allowed rebel fleets to hide in asteroid belts and nebulae. The Miraleth's understanding of biological systems led to weapons that could disable Council ships without killing their crews. The Kelhari became master spies, using their diplomatic immunity to carry intelligence across enemy lines. The Council's response was predictably brutal. Vorthak battle fleets struck at rebel worlds with overwhelming force, turning cities to ash and poisoning entire ecosystems. But for every world they destroyed, 3 more joined the rebellion. The turning point came at the Battle of the Nexus, a crucial hyperspace junction that controlled access to the galaxy's core systems. The Council assembled the largest fleet in their history, over 5,000 warships, representing the combined might of all 7 apex predator species. They expected to face a ragtag collection of prey species flying obsolete ships and improvised weapons. Instead, they encountered something that challenged every assumption they had about warfare. The rebel fleet was not trying to match the Council's firepower. Instead, they had turned the battle into a test of adaptation and innovation. Ships designed by newly awakened Krolex engineers could reconfigure themselves during combat. Miraleth biotechnology allowed rebel vessels to heal damage faster than the Council could inflict it. But the real shock was the tactical coordination. The humans had taught their allies something the apex predators had never learned: how to fight as equals rather than as a rigid hierarchy. When a Krolex mining ship was damaged, Kelhari traders moved to assist immediately. When Miraleth bioships needed time to regenerate, human pilots provided cover without being ordered. Captain Ryan Brooks, now commanding a mixed-species crew aboard a ship built from technologies the Council had never seen, found himself at the center of a battle that would determine the galaxy's future. "Council fleet is moving to surround us," reported Navigation Officer Laura Beck. Her console now showed data from sensors, developed by 3 different species, giving her a picture of the battle that was more complete than anything a single race could achieve. "They're still thinking like predators," observed Communications Officer Amy Foster. "They want to isolate and destroy individual targets. They don't understand that we're not a hierarchy, we're a network." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Council fleet was retreating, leaving behind damaged ships and shattered assumptions. They had been defeated not by superior force, but by superior adaptation. As Brooks watched the enemy fleet jump to hyperspace, he realized that the rebellion had crossed a threshold. They were no longer just fighting for their freedom. They were proving that strength could mean something entirely different from what the galaxy had believed for 3 millennia. "What's our next move?" asked Chief Engineer Danny Campbell, already working on repairs that incorporated new technologies shared by their alien allies. Brooks looked at the tactical display showing rebel forces across the galaxy. Hundreds of species that had never spoken to each other were now working together, sharing knowledge and resources in ways that would have been impossible under the old system. "We show them what the galaxy looks like when everyone gets to contribute," he said. "The Council thinks they're fighting a war. But we're building something completely new." The defeat at the Nexus sent tremors through the very foundations of the Dominion Council. For 3,000 years, their authority had been absolute, built on the simple principle that the strong ruled the weak. Now that principle lay in ruins, scattered like debris from their retreating warships. In the great hall of the Council's capital world, emergency sessions ran around the clock. The 7 apex predator species that had ruled the galaxy faced a crisis none of them understood how to handle. "Our fleets are superior," insisted General Korthax, his massive claws scraping gouges in the metal table. "Our weapons are more powerful. Our ships are faster and stronger. How are we losing to prey species?" Hive Queen Zexara's compound eyes flickered with data streams from across the galaxy. "The answer is coordination. They fight as one organism while we fight as 7 separate armies. Each time our forces engage, they adapt faster than our commanders can respond." Intelligence Director Vorthal spread holographic displays showing the scope of the rebellion. "It's worse than defeat in battle. They're dismantling our entire system. Supply lines are breaking down. Agricultural worlds are producing food for rebels instead of us. Our own worker species are deserting in massive numbers." Commander Thexval, scarred from his own encounters with human tactics, studied the reports with growing unease. "There's something else. Our own soldiers are beginning to question orders. Yesterday, a Vorthak battalion refused to bombard a Kelhari civilian center. They said it was not honorable combat." The most troubling report came from the outer territories. Entire Council garrisons had not just been defeated, they had been converted. Apex predator soldiers who had been captured by rebels were being released after what the humans called educational discussions. Many of these soldiers were now fighting alongside their former enemies. "It's psychological warfare," declared War Marshal Thexcon. "They're using some kind of mind control technology." But Thexval knew better. He had seen the recordings of these educational discussions. The humans were not controlling minds. They were opening them. They were showing Council soldiers something that challenged everything they had been taught about strength and dominance. The decision to implement the Alpha Gambit came from desperation disguised as confidence. "We will challenge them to the Alpha Trials," announced Supreme Commander Vorthak, the eldest and most powerful of the Vorthak nobles. 7 champions representing the apex species against 7 humans. Single combat broadcast across the galaxy. When we defeat them, the natural order will be restored. It was a trap disguised as honor. The Council believed they could win any contest based on individual strength. They chose their finest warriors, beings who had been bred for generations to be perfect killers. Thexval himself would represent the Vorthak, along with champions from each apex species. These were creatures that had never known defeat, whose very presence struck fear into entire worlds. But Captain Brooks understood what the Council did not. The trials were not just about combat. They were about proving a point to the entire galaxy. If humans could win, it would show every species that the old order was truly broken. Brooks did not choose his team based on fighting ability alone. Chief Engineer Danny Campbell was selected for his problem-solving, skills and ability to turn any situation into an engineering challenge. Dr. Helen Ward brought her knowledge of alien biology and her talent for healing, rather than harming Pilot. Kevin Shaw was chosen for his spatial awareness and ability to think in 3 dimensions. Communications officer Amy Foster brought her systems expertise and talent for finding connections where others saw only chaos. Navigation officer Laura Beck offered her tactical mind and gift for seeing patterns. Chief Science Officer Carl Rodriguez completed the team with his adaptability and ability to learn from any situation. The trials began on a neutral space station built specifically for the event. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched as the contest unfolded. For prey species, it was their greatest hope. For the Council, it was their chance to restore fear and order. The first trial pitted Danny Campbell against Krexthor, a Zephyrian warrior drone whose cybernetic enhancements made him faster and stronger than any organic being. The creature was designed to be the perfect killer, emotionless, efficient, unstoppable. But Campbell did not try to match the drone's physical capabilities. Instead, he did something that confused everyone watching. As the drone attacked, Campbell threw himself between the creature and a group of station workers who had been evacuated to a viewing area. The drone's programming faltered. It was designed to eliminate threats efficiently, but Campbell's action created a tactical situation it had never encountered. Protecting others was not logical combat behavior. It served no purpose in establishing dominance. In that moment of confusion, Campbell struck, not at the drone but at the station's environmental controls. By adjusting gravity, atmosphere, and lighting, he turned the arena itself into his ally. The drone, designed for standard combat conditions, could not adapt quickly enough. When Campbell won, he did something unprecedented. Instead of celebrating his victory, he helped repair the damaged drone, using his engineering skills to fix systems that had been damaged during the fight. "Why do you aid a defeated enemy?" asked the confused drone. "Because you're not my enemy," Campbell replied. "You're a victim of the same system we're trying to change." The second trial featured Dr. Helen Ward against Scaroth, a massive predator whose venom could kill most species in seconds. The crowd expected a quick execution. Instead, they witnessed something that challenged their understanding of what victory meant. Ward had spent weeks studying Scaroth's biology through recordings of previous fights. She discovered that the creature's aggression was caused by a genetic disease that had been slowly poisoning it for years. Instead of fighting, she used her medical knowledge to cure the condition. As the poison left Scaroth's system, the creature's natural personality emerged. Not the mindless killer it had been engineered to be, but an intelligent being who had been trapped inside its own biological programming. The alien warrior looked at its claws, then at Ward, with new understanding. "I remember things. Before the modifications, I was not always this way." For the first time in arena history, a champion yielded not because of defeat, but because of gratitude. By the third trial, something unprecedented was happening. The apex predator champions were beginning to question their own nature. They had spent their lives believing that strength came from the ability to dominate others. But the humans were demonstrating a different kind of power, the strength to lift others up rather than tear them down. In the viewing boxes where the council members watched, silence replaced the confident boasting. For the first time in their long lives, the apex predators were beginning to understand that they might have been wrong about everything. The trials continued, each one challenging not just the fighters, but the fundamental beliefs of an entire civilization, and across the galaxy on 1,000 different worlds, beings who had accepted their place at the bottom of the hierarchy began to dream of something better. The Alpha trials had become something no one expected. Not a display of dominance, but a revelation that challenged everything the galaxy believed about strength. As the trials progressed, the line between victor and defeated began to blur in ways that confused everyone watching. The fourth trial paired pilot Kevin Shaw against Mordek, the Sky Render, a winged predator whose species had ruled the gas giant systems for centuries. Mordek could fly at speeds that would tear apart most creatures, and his natural weapons could slice through armor like paper. But Shaw did not try to match the creature's speed or strength. Instead, he did something that revealed the fundamental flaw in the Council's understanding of power. As Mordek dove at him with lethal intent, Shaw began to teach. "Your flight pattern has a weakness. Shaw called out, dodging the attack by inches. You're predictable because you've never had to adapt. You've always been the fastest thing in the sky. Shaw began to demonstrate three-dimensional movement that Mordek had never seen before. Human pilots had learned to fly in space where there was no up or down, where movement required thinking in ways that gravity-bound creatures could not imagine. Watch, Shaw said, using the arena's artificial gravity fields to change direction in impossible ways. Flight is not about speed, it's about freedom. As the trial continued, something remarkable happened. Mordek began to copy Shaw's movements, learning techniques that had never occurred to his species. For the first time in his life, the proud Skyrender was discovering new ways to fly. When Shaw finally outmaneuvered his opponent, Mordek did not feel defeated. He felt liberated. I have flown for 40 years, the winged creature said, landing gracefully beside Shaw. But only today have I learned what flight truly means. The fifth trial brought communications officer Amy Foster face-to-face with Vexithera, a telepathic hunter whose mental abilities could drive most beings insane. The creature could read thoughts, project fear, and control the minds of weaker species. But Foster had spent years working with communication systems that spanned star systems. Her mind was used to processing multiple data streams simultaneously, filtering signals from noise, maintaining clarity in chaos. When Vexithera attacked her thoughts, Foster did something unprecedented. Instead of defending her mind, she opened it. She shared her memories freely, not just her own experiences, but the collective knowledge of humanity's journey through space. The telepathic predator, expecting to find a simple mind to dominate, instead encountered the entire human network. Foster's consciousness was connected to her crew, to the rebellion, to every species they had helped liberate. You see only individuals to control, Foster said, her voice calm despite the psychic assault. But we are part of something larger. When you attack one of us, you face all of us. Vexithera recoiled, overwhelmed by the complexity of what she had encountered. For a species that fed on mental isolation and fear, the human's connection to others was incomprehensible. How do you maintain your sense of self while being part of so many others? The confused predator asked. Because being connected makes us stronger, not weaker, Foster replied. Your power comes from making others alone. Ours comes from making sure no one has to be. The sixth trial was the most challenging yet. Navigation Officer Laura Beck faced Thokran the Voidwalker, a creature that existed partially outside normal spacetime. It could appear and disappear at will, attack from angles that did not exist in normal geometry. But Beck had spent her career navigating hyperspace, where conventional physics broke down, and navigation required intuitive understanding of dimensions that most beings could not perceive. As Thokran phased in and out of reality, Beck began to predict its movements by reading the subtle distortions its presence created in local spacetime. You're not disappearing, she observed, dodging an attack that came from impossible directions. You're moving through folded space, but every fold creates ripples. Beck began using the arena's own structure against her opponent, turning the solid walls and floors into a navigation aid. By reading how Thokran's movements affected the local environment, she could predict where the creature would appear next. The battle became a lesson in advanced physics, with Beck demonstrating navigation techniques that even Thokran's species had never mastered. Impossible, the Voidwalker said, appearing solidly in normal space for the first time in the fight. How can a species bound to single-dimensional existence understand multi-dimensional movement? Because we learn to navigate by working together, Beck replied. Every human pilot shares knowledge with every other. We don't guard our secrets. We share them so everyone becomes better. The seventh and final trial paired Chief Science Officer Carl Rodriguez against Zerkoth the Gene Lord, a being that could adapt its body to any environment or threat in real time. The creature was essentially immortal, able to regenerate from any injury and immune to most forms of attack. Rodriguez faced an opponent that was everything humans were not, individually perfect, self-sufficient, requiring nothing from others to survive and thrive. But as the fight progressed, Rodriguez revealed the weakness in such perfection. You can adapt to anything, he said, studying the creature's responses to different stimuli, but you can only adapt to things you understand. What happens when you encounter something completely new? Rodriguez began using techniques borrowed from all 6 of his teammates. combining engineering solutions with medical knowledge, communication theory with navigation principles. He fought not as an individual but as a representative of everything humans had learned by working together. Zerkoth could adapt to any single approach, but could not keep up with the constant changes as Rodriguez shifted between different disciplines and methodologies. Your adaptability is limited by your individual experience, Rodriguez explained as his opponent struggled to counter techniques that drew from dozens of different fields. Ours is limited only by our collective imagination. When the 7 trials ended, something unprecedented had occurred. Not a single human champion had been defeated, but more importantly, not a single apex predator champion felt truly defeated either. In the viewing chambers, the Dominion Council sat in stunned silence. Their greatest warriors had not just lost, they had been transformed. Each champion had learned something that challenged their understanding of strength, power, and dominance. Commander Thexval rose slowly from his seat, his scarred scales rippling with emotions he had never experienced before. "I must face the human captain myself," he announced, "one final trial to determine the fate of our civilization." But as he prepared for what would be the most important fight of his life, Thexval was beginning to suspect that the humans had already won something far more significant than a series of combat trials. They had won the right to redefine what it meant to be strong. The final arena was different from all the others. Built in the heart of the Council's capital station, it was a massive sphere where artificial gravity could be controlled and adjusted at will. Representatives from every species in the galaxy had gathered to witness what many believed would be the end of an era. Commander Thexval stood at one end of the arena, 10 feet of reptilian muscle and natural armor. His scales had been polished to mirror brightness, and small flames danced around his claws. He was everything the Dominion Council represented, powerful, intimidating, born to dominate. Captain Ryan Brooks stood at the opposite end, looking small and fragile by comparison. No natural weapons, no armor, no obvious physical advantages. But as he looked across the arena at his opponent, Brooks carried something Thexval was only beginning to understand: the weight of an entire galaxy's hopes. "This ends here." "Human," Thexval announced, his voice echoing through the sphere. "I will prove that the natural order cannot be broken by clever tricks and cooperation. Strength rules, as it always has." Brooks nodded respectfully. "You're right that this ends here, but not the way you think." The battle began with Thexval's charge, moving with speed that should have been impossible for something so large. His claws left gouges in the metal floor, and the flames around his body turned the air itself into a weapon. But Brooks was not where Thexval expected him to be. Using techniques learned from every member of his crew, he moved through the 3-dimensional space like Kevin Shaw had taught him, read the subtle patterns in his opponent's movements like Laura Beck had shown him, and stayed calm under pressure like Amy Foster had demonstrated. "You fight well for prey," Thexval admitted, adjusting his tactics. "But you cannot win. I am stronger, faster, better armed." "This is what strength means, is it?" Brooks asked, continuing to evade the powerful attacks. "Let me show you what I've learned about strength." As the fight continued, Brooks began to talk. Not to distract his opponent, but to share something that Thexval had never heard before: the true history of humanity. "My species evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day," Brooks said, using the arena's variable gravity to stay out of reach. "Ice ages that lasted thousands of years, predators that were bigger and stronger than us in every way, diseases that could wipe out entire populations." Thexval pressed his attack, but found himself listening despite his focus on combat. "We had no natural weapons, no armor, no special abilities," Brooks continued. "We should have died out in the first generation. But we didn't. Do you know why?" The Vorthak commander paused, genuinely curious despite himself. "Because we learned to share strength instead of hoarding it," Brooks explained. "When one human discovered fire, they taught others. When someone invented tools, the knowledge spread. Our strength was never individual. It was collective." "Impossible," Thexval snarled, renewing his attack. "The strong survive. The weak perish. This is the way of nature." "That's where you're wrong," Brooks said, and for the first time in the fight he stopped running. Instead, he moved toward his opponent, not to attack, but to demonstrate something unprecedented. As Thexval raised his claws for a killing blow, Brooks did something that stopped the Vorthak warrior cold. He reached out and steadied Thexval as the commander stumbled slightly on the uneven arena floor. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to everything the fight should be, that Thexval froze in confusion. "What are you doing?" the commander demanded. "Showing you what real strength looks like," Brooks replied calmly. "You stumbled. I could have attacked while you were off balance. Instead, I helped you. That's the difference between us." For the first time in his life, Thexval found himself questioning everything he believed. "But if you will not take advantage of weakness, how can you win?" "By making sure there is no weakness to take advantage of," Brooks said. "My crew taught me that. Every human who ever lived taught me that. We don't win by making others fall. We win by helping everyone rise." The revelation hit Thexval like a physical blow. All around the arena, the watching crowds fell silent as they witnessed something that had never happened before, an apex predator beginning to understand what he had been missing. "I have spent my life believing that to be strong, others must be weak," Thexval said slowly, his claws retracting. "But you are showing me something different. Strength that comes from making others weak is not strength at all," Brooks replied. "It's just fear wearing armor. Real strength builds others up. It protects instead of destroys. It creates instead of consuming." As the two warriors stood facing each other, the final transformation began, not just of Thexval but of everyone watching. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, beings who had accepted their place in the hierarchy began to see new possibilities. "If I yield," Thexval asked quietly, "what becomes of my people, of all the apex predator species? We know nothing but domination." "Then we'll teach you," Brooks said simply, "just like you could teach us about strength and courage in ways we've never imagined. That's what cooperation means. Everyone contributes their best qualities." The moment when Commander Thexval knelt before Captain Brooks was broadcast across the galaxy. But it was not a moment of defeat, it was a moment of awakening. "I yield," Thexval said, "not because you have beaten me, but because you have shown me what I could become." The arena erupted not in cheers of victory, but in something more profound. The sound of an entire civilization realizing it could be better than it was. In the months that followed, the transformation of the galaxy began in earnest. The Dominion Council dissolved itself, replaced by the Galactic Cooperative, a true democracy where every species contributed according to their strengths rather than their ability to dominate. The Kroleks became master engineers, their unique physiology perfect for construction projects that spanned star systems. The Miraleth developed agricultural techniques that could feed entire sectors while healing damaged ecosystems. The Kelhari used their linguistic gifts to help different species understand each other in ways that had never been possible. Even the former apex predators found new roles. The Vorthak became protectors and peacekeepers, using their strength to defend the weak instead of oppressing them. The Zephyrians shared their hive mind technologies to create communication networks that connected every world. Humans found their place not as rulers, but as facilitators, the species uniquely gifted at bringing others together and helping them discover their own potential. The Harmony Station, built cooperatively by dozens of species, became the symbol of the new galaxy. It was a massive structure where any being could live and work together, regardless of their origin or biology. Captain Brooks stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching ships from across the galaxy dock at the ports below. Children of a dozen different species played together in the recreation areas, learning not who was stronger or weaker, but how their different abilities could complement each other. Dr. Lisa Morgan joined him at the window, carrying her latest research. "The genetic restoration programs are ahead of schedule," she reported. 3 more species have recovered cognitive abilities that were suppressed for generations. "And the former council worlds?" Brooks asked. "Thexval is leading integration efforts on 12 systems. He says it's the most rewarding work he's ever done." Morgan smiled. "Who would have thought that the scariest predator in the galaxy would become one of our best ambassadors?" As they watched, a new ship approached the station, one that combined technologies from dozens of different species. It was beautiful in its diversity, a perfect example of what could be accomplished when different strengths work together. "Do you ever regret it?" Morgan asked. "We could have become the new apex predators. The galaxy would have followed us." Brooks shook his head. That would have made us just another version of what came before. Better to teach everyone that they could be strong together than to prove we could be strong alone. A young human child ran past them, chasing an alien friend whose species had once been classified as barely intelligent workers. They were laughing together, completely unaware that such friendship had once been impossible. The best victory, Brooks realized, is the one where everyone wins. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson, that true strength was not the power to stand above others, but the courage to lift each other up. In trying to prove they were alpha, the Council had discovered something far more valuable. They had learned what it meant to be truly free,